peers' experience, looking at research that they have done, maybe looking at experiments they have done, and we, VTA, can also launch our own pilots and take a fast-fail approach and see what works and what doesn't work, and then do some data analytics based on our own pilots. I also want to mention that a key part of understanding our rider is through doing surveys of our own riders. If you do a very robust survey, you can get a lot of kind of quantitative information from the survey, and then we can put that in data analytic and understand what's important for our riders. Okay, so I'm wrapping up kind of the section on the current foundation in data strategy. I do want to mention maybe a couple of notable efforts that will strengthen this existing foundation. For example, my colleague in the IT department are developing a data warehouse for the agency. Data warehousing is the process of constructing and using a centralized repository to collect, cleanse, and integrate large volumes of current and historical data from disparate sources. The data warehouse acts as a single source of truth for business intelligence, enabling advanced analytics, reporting, and data mining to drive decision-making. So this slide highlights the main areas of focus in this strategy, and I'm not going to bore you by reading through them. So on my beginning slide, I have listed GIS, Geographic Information System, as a key decision or data-driven tool. And I just want to kind of take a quick moment to explain what GIS is. It is a spatial decision engine that connects the where things happen to why that happened, and transforming raw data into actionable intelligence. It acts as a central nervous system for an organization, streamlining complex workflows by automating data collection, analyzing spatial relationships, and optimizing access in real time. I do want to know that a large majority of data that we develop, we collect, they have a spatial component. So that's where GIS is most powerful for. Sorry, let me go back to my slide. So over the last decades or so, VTA has have grown from using GIS to perform complex spatial analysis to using it to streamline a lot of the business processes across different departments. But there's a lot more that we could do. There's a lot of potential there in this rapidly evolving technology. So we want to develop a roadmap that would allow us to take the next step in a more strategic and thoughtful manner. And this slides basically lists the key key strategies in what we see as an expansion of our current technology. The end goal here is to really strengthen our advanced data analytics capacity and make better informed decisions. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Sam.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Louisa. And so I'll close the foundation section just by saying again that data is the foundation of how we make decisions. I mean, we make decisions based on human beings because at the end of the day, we move human beings, but we have a lot of data that we are currently able to harness. Could we do better? Of course. And we are focused also on continuous improvement here at VTA. But we are going to continue to leverage our own expertise to optimize our own operational data and continue to modernize our forecasting abilities, again, so that we can best predict the ROI on these public investments.
Great. So at this point. We have plenty more slides, but we want to break up a little. I'll start with our vice chair for any questions and then give other directors an opportunity to ask questions on our foundation.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and appreciate the foundational section. I think it's really good to see all the investments we're making. I would say I hope we're spending a bit of time up front on the how of kind of how do we collect data and do the analysis, and I just hope going forward with our precious time, we then really focus a lot on what are the insights we're generating, what are the assumptions we think we might want to make, some of these kind of key bets we're going to have to frame up soon. But this is great. I know there's a tremendous amount of work going on, so I don't want to diminish that at all. Two questions from me related to the foundational section. You pointed out this, I think, insight that if we increase speeds by 15%, we think we can increase ridership by 13%. And I guess I have two questions on that. One is, how much of that speed increase do we think we can generate from technology versus having to buy more buses and hire more people? And I ask because, as you know, through our partnership in San Jose, we have managed to increase bus speeds by about 20% by using an AI-enabled tool to kind of subtly change the duration of red lights and just reduce the probability that a bus hits a red light. It's been a great partnership. It's something I tout and share with the world. I think every city should be doing this. We're really proud of the work. We didn't have to buy any more buses. We didn't really have to increase costs, very, very marginal costs to really increase speeds. But I think we're still kind of trying to stick to the schedule maybe. And I'm curious, can we speed up the whole system enough with technology that maybe we can get the headways down enough that we don't even need a schedule for people because they just know a bus is going to be there every 10 minutes or so, right? So anyway, just curious for comments on that, if you have them.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I don't want to give away too much of my section, but you mentioned speed.
Getting ahead.
We actually have there's 8 strategies in the Reimagine section, and 4 of them deal with transit speed. Not just for the rider experience reason, but also because speed is a fundamental cost driver for VTA. One of the 4, like you mentioned, is transit signal priority, and being ambitious with transit signal priority. That is a huge in fact, it is the largest single opportunity in the Reimagine section to both reduce costs and improve the customer experience.
Right.
There's others like modernizing our fare collection so that we're not stopped collecting cash fares for 13 seconds per rider. There's headway-based scheduling like you talked about. And then there's focusing our capital dollars on capital projects that generate that speed benefit.
Got it. And do you see a future where on our primary or highest frequency routes, we stop needing to publish an actual schedule and just tell people you can expect a bus every 10 minutes?
Absolutely. That is called headway-based scheduling. Yeah. It is one of the strategies.
Beautiful. I would love to see that future. That's great. Okay. Quickly, we've talked a lot, and I know Director Weinberg has made this point, I think, very cogently in the past. We want to compete for riders of choice. Does any of your analysis help us understand when a given intervention is actually going to help us break into a market where somebody's actually choosing not to use their car because suddenly this service is just a better alternative? Do we have a way of kind of estimating?
The industry has evolved on this, and it continues to evolve. Because the market segmentation research that was done in like the early 2000s and mid 2010s, it's a little bit dated at this point because now the industry is really focusing on the customer experience and looking at the transit market as a spectrum of all different types of riders. And really what we're learning is when you improve the fundamentals of transit, which is fast, frequent, reliable, clean, safe, and the customer experience, riders of all types and people of all types will choose transit because a better bus, a faster bus, a more reliable bus is attractive to anybody no matter what, the market segmentation might have put you in a bucket. So that's our strategy here, is just to expand the attractiveness of transit to the entire transit market, and all riders of all types will choose transit.
Yeah. Makes sense theoretically. I'd love to know in our modeling if we think there are certain routes where we are such a good option that due to cell phone travel patterns, the people who live adjacent to a route are our target market for getting out of their car because we happen to have high frequency ridership to their place of work every day. I know for me, I took Caltrain every day up to San Francisco for 2.5 years because it just so happened it mapped my route from where I lived to where I worked. And once I was aware of the service, it's like, I'm going to take it, right? But I don't know that we're marketing to those people in the areas where we have the service they should want. So I want to connect those dots. And then finally, sorry, I lied. I had a final third question. everything you listed is right. All the safe, clean, frequent, reliable, all those are great. There's one you didn't mention, though, that I think our polling has consistently showed is the number 2 reason people don't use transit. So number 1 is actually the speed and reliability piece you're speaking to, and you guys emphasized in this foundational section. The other, though, is it doesn't go to enough of the places I want to go. And I wonder, and maybe you're going to get into this, but that feels pretty foundational to me. And that's where public-private partnerships, last mile solutions, getting really creative about how do we, without something that we can't afford to do, actually offer people a lot more pickup and drop-off locations, basically. I mean, how do you create a lot more nodes? Because the nature of a network is the more nodes you have in the network, the more valuable the network is for everybody. It's just literally mathematically how it works. So is that, how fundamental, how foundational is that to the strategies and the data analysis we're going to be doing?
Well, I would say, to zoom out a bit, you can't ride a bus that doesn't come, just like Carolyn said, and I think our service levels in our county are too low for the county. We should be providing more service, and that is the fundamental issue. And whether that's a 40-foot bus in an urban corridor, or if it's some type of on-demand service or something like a zone-based service, the service type evolves, and we are absolutely in that space and engaged in new modern transit service methods. And you tailor that for the market that you're serving. But the basic point, I think, is that we just need to provide more service for the county.
Got it. But by more service, you're not just saying more frequency on the key routes. You're saying more nodes in the network.
Service
more routes.
New corridors, new routes.
Got it.
More frequency, more hours. Yeah, all of the above.
Got it. Glad to hear we're thinking about both. Thank you.
So can I just say, so I think the first and last mile is interesting because it may not be a transit service. It's actually maybe a P3, and looking at sort of districts or areas that you're going to serve through like a P3 or some other kind of mobility option that allows you to do that and then gets you to a hub or a core or a node. And actually the other thing that you're going to see in Transform is really making these hubs or stations somewhere where you want to be to get, and makes it comfortable to be at that hub to wait for the bus or the train, or hopefully not very long, but to be and engage in a place to be. So I think those are things that where you're really looking at transforming is where are those hubs and what are those going to look like, and those are the things that we're looking at, some of the major destination locations. So those are all things that we're going to be looking at in this.
Great. Thank you for your questions and staff for the responses. I'll just go down this way to see if we have questions. Anyone else? Just raise your hand. Director Weinberg.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation, and even more so, thank you very much for all the work that you have put into this already. And I want to thank the Vice Chair. He actually asked a lot of the questions that I was going to. There's one more question that I'd like some clarity on. In receiving the presentation you gave about the use of data, it struck me that the uses almost unilaterally are reactive in how data is being analyzed as opposed to being proactive. So you're getting a lot of data about where people are using our services or where there's opportunities to improve existing services. I didn't feel like there was a connection, though, to the opportunities to find the riders of choice or riders who are in areas that maybe aren't served as frequently in some parts of the county as others. And I was just wondering, is there some way of tying into the data tools that you've already discussed and you presented today to look for opportunities that won't show in the data right now because there's no service, that bus doesn't exist for someone to take?
Sure. So one of the tools that I mentioned are surveys, right? So by surveys, I don't mean to just the onboard passenger surveys that we do on our transit vehicles. We actually collaborate with MTC and other agency partners in a region. We do what we call household travel surveys, which actually looks beyond the transit passengers. So it's, people who might be driving to work, who might be like biking. So most of transportation. So we do look at that, and we just finished a survey in 23-24, and we are planning another one that will be launched in the fall. So I guess the data from that survey would help us find those potential new riders. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
It does. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm interested in learning more about how the new opportunities for service are being determined by the data. And you've started that. I have a lot more questions about it, but I don't want to slow us down. But I do appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep going, and then I'll go to online director Sel.
I like what Mayor Mayhem, Vice Chair Mayhem was talking about in San Jose, that speeded it up the service, and then it low cost. I was wondering if those kind of technologies, that kind of communication could be communicated to other cities, and then it's a multiplier effect all over the county. So that's my only comment.
Jay, when you get into your presentation, can you talk a little bit about the transit signal priority work that is being done with the cities?
Okay. Other questions? Director Jane?
Thank you for the presentation. I like this effort. Could you go to slide 21 and 22? You're comparing the speed improvements on 21, and you say that if you save 20% travel time, you get a 17% increase in ridership. But then when you go to the visionary network, you save 20% and you get a 71% increase in ridership. So I'm trying to understand, by visionary network, you mean the high speed, like the 522 and the 22 on El Camino? Is that what you mean by if you improve those routes? Because one of the things we were doing with our next network and our visionary network was we were pairing away the less frequent routes and putting our efforts into higher frequency routes like the 522. Can you explain what you mean by visionary network there and how you got those improvements?
Sure. So Visionary Network actually has a list of components that Jay is going to talk about. What we have modeled here is mostly the frequency improvement, and that is what the Visionary Network is. And the darker blue lines in the table on slide number 22, those are like combo strategies, if you will. So they merge the visionary network improvement in frequency with the previous slide's improvement, the speed, transit vehicle speed improvement. So if we couple those two, we're going to see a synergy, and that's where we get the higher percentage increase.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
And then,
Yeah, and so what's really key here is that it's not additive. It actually is more than additive. It is it's not the 48% plus 17% or whatever it would be for whatever frequency it is. A 48, the speed improvement with frequency improvements gives you quite a lot of benefit because of the synergies that we talked about. And so it's really important to add frequency with speed.
okay. And then in terms of data collection, are you envisioning adding like more sensors, like sensors for how many riders get on and when they get, when they get on and when they get off, things like that? Are you looking at more sensors in the network to collect more data to improve it?
You mean on the transit vehicles?
Yeah.
I believe that our current vehicles already have the technology to detect every passenger who get on. Am I right, Jay?
Yeah, we have automated passenger counters on both the buses and the light rail, so we get a lot of good, what I would call big data about ons and offs and origin destination type. So we use it very often in service planning when we're considering like changing routes or frequency increases on routes and serving new markets, that sort of thing. So we use it very often, yeah.
Okay, and my last question is that we're looking for riders of choice to some extent, and I'm a rider of choice, and I drive a lot. But the idea is that when I go to the transit app, and I've mentioned this many times, it doesn't really integrate multimodal travel as well as it should. It should be able to tell me where there are, the bike share locations, and I could select from a number of options. Like someone can drive me to the station, so maybe it's better to drive to a further station which won't have a transfer, because all I care about is my total ride time. That's what every transit rider really cares about. And so how do I select different modes of transportation in the transit app to be able to get the shortest travel time? Thank you.
Director Mulcahy.
Thank you, Chair. Just two things, and thank you for the report and the deep dive. I wanted to go back to the last mile that the Vice Chair brought up. Last mile isn't always another mode of transportation. It could be your feet. And in those areas where, and I'll use Diridon as a good example, where we cross, through Caltrain-related properties, joint powers, lands, to a light rail stop into downtown, somebody's going to a job, right? That experience matters to someone who may be using that mode of transportation to get to a destination and then walk to their work. So that walkability matters. And so I just want to call out the need, just the ongoing need of these real understandings about these cross-jurisdictional relationships, because the rider doesn't care whose responsibility it is, whether the lights are out on the pathway to get to our downtown along the light rail. That doesn't matter to them. And I think better understanding as an organization of how we're going to solve that. I don't know about my other colleagues at the table here who represent other cities, but I imagine it's the same experience in other places where somebody's getting to a destination, walking to a job, and that experience is not what it could be. And I would just say that I think we have a responsibility at VTA to express that to our other partners, our other cities, and other organizations that we interact with in that regard. So I just want to put that out there. The other thing is, many of us were last night at the Chamber of Commerce event, and the key feature last night was sort of AI and how companies can be using it. I'm curious, Sam, I think you were the first one who brought up, I was going to wait how many slides we got till we talked about AI. You brought it up first, and Louisa, you sort of talked about it. How well resourced is VTA to continue to invest? Because this is going to evolve it feels like it's every week for me, but certainly, for us, it's going to be a matter of months, right, before we sort of get the next iteration of how we can utilize these tools. How well resourced are we to be able to continue to invest there? But most importantly, do we have the team on site here? With no disrespect, I don't know enough about what we have to really understand what we need. And are we prepared to go out and find what we need to make sure that we're applying AI to the best of our ability?
I'm not sure if I should defer to our general manager. I mean, I would say from my
She was there
experience-
last night with us.
I
so
was.
She
I
might be
know.
thinking about it.
Oh, I was thinking about it, because, I mean, it is moving really fast. I will say that. There are a lot of opportunities for AI. I will say that. I think some of there's opportunities for AI that we're actually trying to take advantage of while we're doing the ERP, EAM systems right now. That's important to us. And so where we can use those practices. There's opportunities for AI, particularly in safety and security, that we're looking into in the industry. So those are big areas. So there's specific areas that we're looking into right now, both for business processes as well as areas in terms of safety and security. I think those are the areas right now that we're looking into. And then we'll continue to follow up now, getting the workforce ready, how we do that, the technological advances. Those are things, all those areas that we're looking at using AI and helping support customer service, particularly in areas like getting, there's something right now that's in the customer service industry where you take MARTA is using it in Atlanta, where they're just taking all the information, all the customer service comments, and quickly being able to distill it into a few areas and really understanding where the biggest areas of complaints are, or using AI we might be able to use AI to understand some of our red light violation issues and getting more understanding so we can understand where we need to train better. So those types of things we're going to be ended up using. How to get the workforce ready, or put it this way, it feels overwhelming at times, so we're going to have to pick and
Yeah, I
understand.
guess where I'm headed is, I understand that there's, the reality around our workforce, but what I'm asking is, do we have the expertise in-house today, or have we figured out a way to go find it to make sure that we're asking the right questions about how this can be applicable to us? Not necessarily how we're going to ready the workforce. That's a whole other challenge. But we have all this data that we've just talked about, and one of the most important uses of AI today is interpreting data and find out what it's telling us. That's really, I think, what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we've been using it, Jay, I think it's really been in support of services as we're bringing on technologies.
I can give a good example, exactly what you're talking about. We recognize that in the transit service scheduling world, there is an opportunity to use AI and big data in our new modern scheduling software upgrade, and which is one of the components. I'm going to preview, I guess, again, another of mine. We are about to purchase a new modern scheduling software that uses big data, uses AI, because we can take advantage of the big data that's out there with 12,000 data points on running times on a daily basis for every day that we operate service. We have a really great scheduling team, but imagine how much better we can make the schedules when we add AI to that team and allow them to have that tool. So it's something that we're absolutely, and we knew that we needed to get AI, and so we actually hired a consultant that was an expert in this AI field to help us navigate, create the specs for that software, and now we're off to the races and buying it.
Great, that's what I was looking for. So I'm going to stop, Chair, so I can.
Yeah, I think
we can hear a little more from Jay, because
It's
like his previews.
the same thing we're doing with EAM and ERP is we have a consultant who's helping support us in those efforts and defining how we're going to update our business processes and where AI is useful, and that helps get spec'd into it. So it's sort of in those areas that we're doing it, and then the best practices, talking to people in the industry, and then working with getting specs or areas that other agencies are using. So it's primarily, that's how we're doing it.
Thank you. Director Rennis, online. Sorry, we're not hearing your audio in the room. You are unmuted. Is it an issue with our Zoom? Sorry, our staff is checking. I apologize, we're not getting your audio.
We've been having a lot of technical issues, so I'll have someone look into the volume.
Director Rennis, I'm very sorry about that. Maybe if you could text me your questions, we can make sure they get asked while staff works to address that. I apologize.
Supervisor Arenas, could you please unmute your mic?
I apologize, Supervisor. I think let's go on and do a few more slides, and then we'll come back so you get the opportunity. I'm sorry for those technical issues.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start with the bottom line of the Reimagine section right up front and talk about the central goal, which is really to modernize how service is delivered before we expand how much service is delivered in Santa Clara County. So like Carolyn said, the visionary network is our long-term destination. That's where we're heading and needing to provide more service for the county. But we can't responsibly expand that service if the underlying cost structure is inefficient. So the Reimagine goals here are to get the unit costs down, speeds up, the schedules right, so that our baseline service is more efficient, and then every dollar that we invest in the visionary network goes farther. So the key KPI here that ties everything together is cost per passenger. It's quite simple. You can improve this by working on the numerator and reduce your operating costs, or you can improve it by working on the denominator and growing your ridership. The Reimagine strategy has a portfolio of 8 strategies that actually work on both, reducing our operating costs and increasing our ridership. So they do that both simultaneously. So let me walk you through how those work. First, a discussion of speed, because the first 4 strategies, and as we talked about already, deal with improving transit speed. So I want to give a little context here. VTA's historical bus speeds have declined by 18% over 36 years. So this is clearly significantly impacting our rider experience. Transit is just less competitive. The polling shows that. Our customer feedback shows that. That's very clear. To illustrate, this is a little self-acknowledgement that we perhaps could be doing a lot better on our speed for transit service. It really means, transit is not an attractive option to get places because it simply takes too long. So the rider experience part is very understandable, but there's an additional reason that we focus on speed. And that is because transit speed is a structural driver of our cost. So to illustrate here, Route 23 is a frequent route that runs between De Anza and the Alum Rock Transit Center. And at 15-minute service, which is the adopted service level, and today's speeds, that 15-minute service requires 14 buses. So if we were to increase speed on that route by 15%, that same service, 15-minute frequencies, would require 12 buses. Those 2 buses that we just saved that equate to an annual operating savings of $1 million a year, we can now take those 2 buses and either reinvest them in the same route for more frequent service or somewhere else in new service. And so you can see here, when you multiply this dynamic across the network of 1.7 million hours of service annually, this is in fact, it is one of the most powerful levers that we have to drive unit costs down. Another way to say it is slow buses are expensive, very expensive. So 4 of the 8 strategies are directly focused on recovering that speed. So I'm going to go through the 8 reimagined strategies. The first 2 here on the screen, the first is modernizing our fare collection processes. So fare payment is frequently overlooked as a source of delay, but the average CAS fare transaction takes 13 seconds to collect. That's when the bus is stopped, waiting for that fare to be collected. You multiply that across our network every day, it adds up to meaningful delay. So our fare modernization strategy here is to develop a new fare policy that might include such strategies such as all-door boarding, incentives for electronic fare payment, and monthly fare capping that attack dwell time directly, increasing speed, while also expanding equity access for our lowest income riders. So this is really a win-win on speed, cost, and equity simultaneously. The second is the strategy is about capital investments on the frequent network. And this strategy is really about discipline and applying our limited capital dollars to those projects that generate the greatest return, with projects that have a measurable impact on speed, reliability, or unit costs. So for example, transit priority treatments that get the bus moving faster, downtown light rail realignment onto First Street that will save travel times, and light rail double tracking. So particularly important are those investments that when you make an initial investment, you achieve an ongoing operational savings in perpetuity. So strategies 3 and 4 continue that speed theme and shift to signals and scheduling. So as we discussed already, transit signal priority, red lights are the largest single source of delay in our system. This is, by the way, for both bus and rail service. The initial phases of our partnerships with the cities have focused on infrastructure and equipment in the TSP space. We've been very successful in gaining grant monies and helping the cities build out with new signals, new equipment, cloud-based systems, etc. And now it is, we're definitely transitioning to a period where we're no longer going to be talking much about infrastructure and equipment. It's going to be much more about the policy and transit-first policies. This will require difficult conversations because there is a trade-off between prioritizing transit and prioritizing auto traffic. But that's what's coming next, and this actually represents the single highest return opportunity in the entire reimagined portfolio to improve speeds and then improve unit costs and bring those KPIs into the right direction. And then number 4, as the mayor previewed, transition to headway-based scheduling is also in our future. This is a fundamental change in how we operate service. Headway-based scheduling eliminates buses holding at time points. So buses are no longer chasing a printed schedule, and the operators simply maintain consistent spacing between buses or trains. From a rider's perspective, they don't have to worry about catching a specific departure. They know that the bus or the train is always coming soon. This is viable at 10-minute frequencies in the visionary network, and so that's why it's in our plan here. This reduces excess wait time, eliminates holding delay, and making the entire operation more fluid, of course, in addition to increasing transit speeds. So the next two shift from speed and operations to scheduling tools that unlock efficiencies. Number 5, as I alluded to earlier as well, is we are transitioning to a modern scheduling software. Our current software is very dated. We've had it for 25 years, requiring a lot of manual processes and workarounds that cost us efficiency. We can't see it, but we're absolutely paying for it. And so our new modern scheduling software, which is included in VTA's capital budget, we've made the commitment, it is fully funded. It is, and we're about to execute it, it is going to use advanced AI algorithms, CAD-AVL big data, and finding efficiencies that simply no human could find across the entire network rather than route by route as we do today. The result is more service per dollar across the board. Number 6 is offering part-time operator schedules. This one I'm very excited about. This is aligning our workforce structure with our service need, but also it's about being a better employer. Right now, to cover our peaks, we're forcing operators into these split shifts with 12 to 14-hour spreads and unpaid midday gaps. This is a very consistent complaint that we hear from our operators, and that leads to absenteeism and turnover that's not good for the operator, not good for VTA, and not good for the rider. So part-time schedules would let operators who want shorter straight runs take them, while full-time operators get more straights as well. The workforce benefit is runs that people actually want to work, and that has is foundational to the reliability of our system. The final two strategies zoom out and take a look at the broader environment in which VTA operates. So densifying along the frequent network is number 7. Every other strategy in Reimagine improves how efficiently VTA delivers service, but densification here is the force multiplier of all of them. Developing along high-frequency corridors and increasing developments and putting more on the frequent network means every service hour that we operate carries more potential riders. This is fundamentally a partnership strategy, of course, because VTA controls the bus and the schedule, but cities control zoning and land use. And when that zoning and land use align, densification builds the ridership return on investment that no amount of operational efficiency can replicate on its own. And then the final one, number 8, is, as we've talked about, is the customer experience process. So we are developing a customer experience program for the board's consideration later this year. Customer experience is about closing the gap between service that performs well operationally and service that riders actually want to ride. Recognizes that fast, frequent, and reliable are the foundation of transit service, but the customer experience, adding things like cleanliness, safety, transit information, are what converts occasional riders into habitual ones. This is building trust with riders by closing the loop. So when you're collecting input, you're being transparent about what you've learned, and then you're demonstrating that when we learn things, VTA responds. So those are the 8, and let me show you how they work together as a portfolio. There are 3 distinct themes that emerge, of course, on these strategies. 2 are about structural efficiency, 4 are about improving transit speed and reliability, and then 2 are about the broader environment that determines ridership ceiling. Important point here is that no single strategy gets us there alone. These are designed to compound each other. You can also look at the strategies by who controls them. 5 sit within VTA's control, but 3 depend on our city partners. As again, VTA controls the bus and the driver, cities control the street and the signal. So Reimagine is as much a partnership agenda as it is an internal one, and the conversations we have with cities about transit-first policies and land use decisions are as strategically important as anything that we do internally. So then to wrap up, let me show you what the modeling says this portfolio will deliver. This summarizes what the 8 strategies deliver in aggregate across 3 metrics that matter most to VTA's financial sustainability: unit cost, speed, and ridership. This data-driven analysis draws on Luisa's team's travel demand model, empirical data, and research across the industry to produce these estimates. As you can see, significant improvement on all three when they're implemented. I'll use one as an example, transit signal priority shown in blue there, and as I said, it is significant. Really, this one has a potential to make big improvements on all three of these metrics, improving our unit cost by 4%, speed by 10%, ridership by 4%. Another one I'll mention here is densification in the I guess that's pinkish, on the right-hand side. And really here, the sky is the limit. There's no upside on densification. As we densify, like I said, that's the ridership multiplier, the force multiplier of all the other strategies. And then finally, on my last slide here is where it all comes together. This is where we combine the Reimagine's modernization efforts that bring down our unit costs in the first column there with Visionary Network's service expansion. The results are compelling. On bus, in the first row, Visionary Network's 88% service increase drives a 69% ridership increase at only 41% higher cost. That's because we've driven those unit costs down. This is that modernization dividend at work. Because we've driven the unit costs down first, we're buying nearly twice the service at less than half the proportional cost increase. The bottom line on the right-hand side is significant reductions in cost per passenger. That's the definition of a more productive, more sustainable transit system. Also, I want to note here, this also assumes no changes in land use. So as our densification partnerships with the cities succeed, ridership upside is exponentially greater. So to close, Reimagine is not a cost-cutting program. It is a modernization program that makes VTA operationally more efficient and ready to deliver the Visionary Network as the board adopted, but to do it in a way that is financially sustainable for the long term. And with that, I'll close my remarks.
Thank you. And I want to once again come back to directors for an opportunity. For staff, do we know if we got the Zoom to work? We do, okay. Director Arenas, we'll start with you. With apologies again for the issues. Looks like we fixed it.
No worries. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I had a couple questions. I'm going to go back to slide 23. This is learning from the research, pilots, and surveys. And what I'm asking for is for the board, or at least for me, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I would love to learn about what the research has been, and if you could give us a list or kind of a summary of what that is, not verbally, but if you could submit something that could show us what the pilots that you're going to rely on for from the learning, as well as the research, and then of course the surveys. And I know the surveys have been, I don't know, every so often. That's the other question that I had was, how often do we actually have surveys? And the reason I'm asking for this is because I want to make sure that we have a balanced approach on the information that we are relying on to make all of these very strategic and future decisions on how the system runs. And I think we need to have a balanced approach. And I got nervous when somebody said that the GIS system is going to be the nervous system. And I wanted to understand what that meant, because I think the nervous system should always be our ridership. And they should be the ones really telling us and drawing the pictures in terms of what they really want. I had a committee yesterday where we had some information about contracts that were being underutilized. There's nothing to do with what we're talking here, but it brought up the question for me about, the real question sometimes that we have to ask, regardless of how advanced or how we're collecting this information, whether it's AI or other systems or other village portion processes, is that there's always a question about why, right? There was and I'll tell you just really quickly in the committee, there was going to be a reduction in a contract because of underutilization. But the question for me should we really reduce the contract amount simply because it's been underutilized? But the question really was, our families are now asking for more services on rapid response housing rather than housing homeless prevention. And the question that I don't think, at least I don't believe an AI system really can answer is, these are policy questions that belong to the board, that belong to directors, and that also belong to our ridership. And the question there is why? Why are we now responding more to these kinds of requests from our families if we're already spending and investing much money and time and effort in homeless prevention? Why are we seeing more families in rapid response? And so that obviously has to do with a homeless issue, but if we apply the concept in terms of when we see patterns and trends, it's really important. I did hear you say a lot of what we are going to collect is going to be handled and analyzed by people. I just don't want us to have an over-reliance on AI systems that may overlook the question, especially policy questions that are really important, that I think only folks who actually represent communities, who have a lot of stake in representing communities, such as the board, and especially the ridership that understands their needs the best. And so how are we going to ensure that we are going to have a balanced approach? I heard you loud and clear. Carolyn, you said areas for AI would be business processes and safety, but that is very broad and general. And so, first of all, can we have more information about the tools and the data that we're using to make decisions? And then second, I would like for us to really explore, and maybe this is part of the referral that I'll submit later, is a policy for the uses, the utilization of AI within our systems as we are moving through. I want to make sure that we are not moving as quickly as some of the other government agencies that I think might be jumping on AI, but may have to take real, 5 steps back soon enough because it'll come back with some inadvertent consequences.
Great, go ahead, Steph.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, Director Reynes, Sam Sargent, Director of Strategy. First off, I agree with you that human beings are at the heart of what we do here at VTA. It's who we move, it's who works here, it's what makes this place great, and that includes the board. I have taken a note, and we would be more than happy to come back to the board to collect up some of that research that's been done. You had said not going through it all here in an answer, but maybe packaging it up and sharing that with the board in something like a white paper, or maybe just kind of an expanded memo to follow up on this so that you can see what's behind some of the things that we've presented on. But I do hear you there on sort of the human element versus those AI type tools, or even GIS. I mean, at the end of the day, they are tools for use by human beings, and thankfully we've got a lot of very talented ones here. But I appreciate those questions and comments, and then I'll hand it very quickly to Louisa just on the cadence of the surveying that we do, which was another one of your questions.
Yes, thank you for the question. So in terms of the cadence of the surveys, there are primarily 3 types of surveys that we do here at VTA. Every 5 to 7 years, we partner with MTC to conduct what we call onboard transit passenger surveys. These are basically asking our riders their demographic information, their trip origin destinations, how they get to the stations, and how they go to their final destinations from where they get dropped off. And we collect about 10% of our riders. That's the sample size. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we also do what we call household travel surveys, which is where we ask really deep questions to a variety of households across the region, and not just limited to transit riders. And we just finished one in '24, and we are planning another one to be start in '26. So think about it as we do it every 2 to 3 years. These surveys are pretty expensive, so that is the kind of the cadence that we can handle. And then the third category of surveys is actually done outside of my department. It's by marketing. They do customer experience survey, just different variations of that, and that is handled by our marketing department. And I don't exactly know the cadence of that. Annually. So general manager just said that that is done annually, the customer experience survey.
Great. Is that all from staff? Great. Thank you. Any other questions from directors?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead, Supervisor.
You might want to check in with your marketing department on slide 31, because I don't know that we really want to be compared with a chicken or, oh no, it's a rooster and a duck. As we're coming into the last extension of the light rail, I think this is an opportunity for us to really put another face to ourselves. I think when I heard the first part of our presentation, time is really important. Shaving off those 13 seconds when people are dropping their cash and for their ticket is, needs to get reduced or somehow streamlined. But I think there's a new way of getting to places, or is going to be a new way of getting to places, and that's above ground light rail extension. And I think that it can give us an edge, and we should really maximize that opportunity to bring out a different kind of a narrative, and a different kind of face to light rail, which I think is probably the most effective way to go around our cities and our county is a kind of a last extension above ground. Anyways, those were my questions for now, and if I have more, I'll go ahead and raise my hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from directors? Director Sell and then Foley.
A lot of this talks about technology, and then like for light rail, I was just wondering if fencing and gates, does that, when there's fencing, then the light rail can go maybe faster, and then when there's gates, then it can go through an intersection really quick. Is that involved in this, or is that too expensive?
Jay, did you want to speak to that?
Maybe I can speak to the broader theme here of capital investments to make, it sounds like what you're getting at is capital investments to make light rail faster. And you raise a good example of the opportunity to add treatments to the light rail system to go faster. We've looked at things like gates up and down North First Street, for example. It turned out on that case that the cost and the impacts to auto traffic by removing left-hand turns was just not, it didn't make sense. But we do have a whole portfolio of options on the capital improvement side to improve light rail service speed. So like the downtown realignment, that's another good example. A little bit expensive, admittedly, but it does shave off 4 or 5 minutes in a cycle. And that, as I explained earlier, reduces unit costs and then drives all the KPIs. So we continually look at opportunities to increase speed. TSP is another good example for the light rail system. Yeah.
Thank you. Director Foley?
Thank you. Thank you, Jay, for the presentation. It was very informative, but I have a question for you regarding actually slide 32, where you mentioned that if we increase the speed, we decrease the cost. What's standing in our way from implementing that immediately, if that's the case?
Great question. Our buses and our trains, so this applies both, the dynamic is the same. Our buses and our trains, the way that we provide services, they make cycles. So we adopt a service level. Let's say we want the bus or the train to come every 15 minutes. Then we go out and we look at the corridor, look at the alignment, and it's a matter of speed. Speed is the equation. In the service planning world, buses equals cycle time divided by headway, but okay, I'm getting too detailed. What that means is for the 15-minute service, speed is your driver of your cost. And so if you reduce your speed, you're providing the same service with fewer buses or fewer trains, and so then you can reinvest those somewhere else. And so the cycle time is the factor that you can work on to improve that cost. And then what happens is you just either reinvest it back into that route itself for more frequency, so this could maybe make it 13-minute service, or you reinvest it somewhere else and put those 2 buses somewhere else. And to be clear, our intent here is not to reduce our operating costs and reduce the number of buses on the street. We do want to reinvest them. And then when you reinvest them, you're serving a new market, you're providing better service, faster service, and then your ridership grows over there. So it's about reallocating those dollars and those resources to be more effective. So one example is the 22 that 10 years ago, well, maybe 12 years ago, it cost us maybe not the right word. It took 19 buses at any one time operating back and forth to provide 15-minute service between Palo Alto and Eastridge. Today it takes 22. And that's mostly because of the slowdown in congestion, just like our buses and our trains are stuck in traffic, just like regular cars are. And so that slowdown costs significant annual costs for us that we're now just less efficient, in addition to it just being slower service, which is less attractive and less ridership. Does that answer your question?
Well, not really.
Oh.
I mean, I appreciate the explanation, but it seems to me that we should be able to implement this change right away, and why aren't we? Do we need...
We need your help.
Okay.
Maybe that's what I should have said. This is the example where partnership comes because the cities control the streets and the cities control the signals.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. San Jose adopted a transit-first policy a few years ago, which, just to toot my own horn, I brought to the city of San Jose, and we approved it a few years ago. So I'm glad to hear that it's being implemented within the city of San Jose. Earlier, Jay, during your presentation, you mentioned that the infrastructure exists, but there's issues that stand in the way from it being implemented across the city. So every time this comes up, I ask this question, which is, who's implemented it, who hasn't, what's standing in the way? And this sounds like a political conversation that maybe the directors can get involved in, because it's about speed. People who want to ride transit, they want to get there faster than by their car. They don't want the car to go ahead of the bus. They need to have a transit-first policy. So what obstacles still exist sounds political, and you're looking at a political body. Maybe we can influence this in ways.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And let me take a stab at it, and then Jay, you can fill in it, because I'm so glad you've been you bring this up, Director Foley, and I didn't realize that you had brought this to San Jose. I can tell you from the time that I've been on VTA and even before, it's been an issue that I've been trying to raise in my city, and I can just tell you from being on previous iterations of committees, we've shuffled them around this year. But I think we're both on SSTPO some years ago, and my strong sense, and then following up with staff after those meetings, is that it's been difficult to raise the political salience of this, just frankly, and this isn't from staff, this is my own assessment, to a level where this rose to the top of cities' priorities. I'm proud. I just found out this morning that Campbell has received funding to finally implement this, which, again, I've been trying to work on this for the past 5 years. But I think having these conversations, framing in this way as part of the transformation, it can hopefully give us the education, the tools to go back to our respective cities. We have a number of folks from San Jose, but many of us are the only representatives from our cities that, in conjunction with VTA, whose staff has been mightily trying to work on this for many, many years, my hope would be that we can now have the tools to go back and say, this change, while there may be hundreds of other work plan items that our cities could do, will result in this much faster service and money saved and impact economic development, that we can have the tools to do that. So that's my personal assessment from the past 5 years that I've been working on this, but am I missing anything else from staff's perspective?
I really appreciate the discussion on this topic because it is so important. I do want to acknowledge that we, in our partnerships with the cities, together we've come a long way. And where we are today is a result of great partnership with the cities. We have been able to get a lot of grant funding to get equipment and infrastructure in place. And that's been a long slog. It's taken longer than all of us probably had hoped. But we actually have a vision now. We can see the end where basically the entire frequent network on VTA's network will be on upgraded cloud-based, TSP-capable equipment in the future. We're working with Morgan Hill, Gilroy, Campbell, and Milpitas on the last kind of elements there. So I just want to acknowledge that because our conversations have been mostly about the equipment up until this point. But let's not sugarcoat here. Our conversations now in the future will be about the political side of the trade-off between and who do you prioritize, because at an intersection when you're making decisions, you will have to make decisions and do that trade-off between prioritizing buses at the expense of autos or vice versa, and that's a balancing act. And to your point, that is a political decision. And so we will take you up on your offer for help in helping us to make those decisions, and because ultimately staff at the cities need direction from their elected officials, their policymakers, to give them the priority of what do you want me to prioritize? I can do whatever you want. I need to know what to implement in these, and those conversations are coming. So we are absolutely entering that era where we'll have to have those conversations.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and let me just say that I think one of the things about this measure and the plan is to make sure we have the funding to do all of this, to get all the infrastructure done. And we actually have been very lucky because we did get funding through a SMART grant at the federal level to actually pilot this and to do this. This is great. I will say, and I'm going to be more blunt than Jay, it is really good. We did pilot that we got 20%, and that is what has been touted, that we got 20%. Travel time savings. Are we getting 20% real time now that it's implemented based on where the priorities are when it actually is in real time, with where the city staff has to place their priorities? No. It's the pilot that got 20%. What can it do? 20%. Will it get 20% right now? Probably not, because the city staff. So that's the stuff that we have to talk about. So we're aiming to get 15% because we're seeing a big value in 15. 10 doesn't quite do the savings that we're needing to get. It's also true on the light rail, so I'm going to be a little more blunt than Jay. But, we do need to have that. If that's what we really need to have, can we hold to that, and can we try to work through those areas? And maybe if we have, and that's on us as well, is to actually show those KPIs to help support the efforts that you need. And I think if you don't have those, it makes it harder for you to make those cases as well. So I think that's up to us to help to give you that information.
Yeah, it's a great discussion for directors. I hope we will follow up and keep on this. It's been difficult to get attention for transit signal priority, but I think saying it's saving money, getting people to work on time where they need to be, more efficiency, helps frame it a little bit better. Do you have questions on this side? Director Candelas?
No, thank you. I was going to save my questions to the end, but I can't wait anymore. I have to. I'm so anxious to talk about this. Now, to Director Foley's point, and the whether it's the transit signal priority funding, which a lot of cities and a lot of agencies use as a we don't have the money to integrate this program, and thus we can't hit our headway goals, if you will, to provide service. One of the points that I wanted to make on this transformation piece specifically, and Jay, I'm glad you brought Carolyn's frequent line about can't increase bus speeds if there's no bus coming, because one of the concerns that I have is in areas that fall outside of our service delivery, there are folks who are paying a premium to have that public transit because they have no access. And it's not folks who we traditionally think of. It's either folks who are reliant on paratransit, who are disabled, or just don't have a vehicle, and it's folks like that who pay a premium, and it's my hope that when we start planning for a future system that's efficient and we get these capital savings or these savings to the way we operate, we can look at our coverage areas and what kind of service are we offering and to who. That's an important piece that I think I want to stress is, yes, we want to double down, and I'm glad, Jay, you said it's not a savings, it's a reinvestment into our system. Well, part of that system reinvestment should be into how can we improve where we are providing the coverage. That's one point I wanted to make. And earlier, to the first piece, I was going to wait till the end to talk about this, but I'm going to go back to the first piece. And I'm glad that we as an agency are obviously already rooting our decision-making in data, whether it's our business practices or our on-time performance metrics. It's important. And I want to make sure that we are using and purposefully packaging that data to improve that customer experience, whether it's real-time knowledge of like, hey, my bus is 2-3 stops away and I know it, or to Director Suds' point earlier where he said where we actually know real-time travel time on this bus I'm about to board to make my appointment at 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. So yes, it's great to have all this data to improve our internal processes, but how are we communicating and packaging that data for our customers? I think that's an important piece, especially as we look towards the future. And one of the things that I was going to wait till the end, and hopefully this is coming in the next piece, but is how will this transformation and how are we integrating our workforce as part of these conversations to make sure that our unions are on board with this future, that we're going to be tasking with driving the bus figuratively, so that's something that I haven't heard, and I'm hoping that I'm glad one of the core strategies that I saw was a consideration of part-time operating schedules to make sure to give that flexibility and opportunity for our drivers. But I'm curious to hear how are we looping them in as part of this process to have this open conversation and to see how they can be brought in now and not in the future with like, oh, here's what we packaged for you. And so that's an important piece that I haven't heard thus far, and I'd like to see, and hopefully it's coming in the next piece, but that's it for now. Thanks.
Why don't you address some of the stuff, particularly some of these areas, they're engaged in discussions about this, like the modern scheduling software. Jay has actually talked to them, has meetings with the unions. We recently, actually over the last couple of weeks, have talked to each union about, this actual presentation and some of the things that we're doing and what we're talking about. We've talked to them about the measure and what we're planning on doing with the investment plan. Some, we try to keep them involved in specific activities that we're doing. And I meet with them every 2 months, and then quarterly we do a meeting with all of them. And we bring up the strategic plan or elements of different pieces so we continue to engage with them. But then the one-on-one, or the meetings like with Jay talking to them about anything that's going on that it might affect them as well. So we try to keep them engaged in various activities.
Thank you, Carolyn.
And I'll be discussing towards the end a little bit more on next steps, which I think we'll get to a couple of the comments that were made, including Director Foley's, just on how do we start engaging even further other policymakers and cities to make sure that investments like TSP happen, are made, are understood, but also as part of the next steps on the local investment plan, there will be both significant outreach but also in-reach, which obviously includes our union partners. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, but it's something to state out loud and to always be cognizant of. And then I also just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for the comment on just on sort of how to take data and turn it into these real tangible customer experience, customer improvement type of investments. That'll also be obviously part of the local investment plan development. I also think it's going to be a big part of the customer experience rollout. But you're exactly right. There's a lot of that about, what is the experience when you were standing at a bus stop in the summer? How much does it matter to be able to know accurately how soon your bus is coming? I mean, I know from my experience at prior experience at other agencies, it makes a massive difference when you know whether, even if a bus is running behind, whether you know that it's coming, you're standing in the shade, whatever it might be. So do know that that's something that we're quite cognizant of. And in fact, Director Mulcahy's earlier comment when you were talking kind of about that total customer journey. What is the experience of getting from your door to whatever the services that we provide? That is something that's also going to be a large part of the customer experience roadmap, and I think will ultimately be an input into part of the local investment plan. So touch on it a bit more towards the end, and I think that we'll touch on some of the labor coordination a little bit more at the end, and then know that in March, April, May, and as we get closer to the June VTA board vote on the local investment plan, this will continue to be a part of the dialogue. So just thank you for that.
Thank you. And I'll say briefly on the union engagement piece, my expectation is that we do more. Doesn't mean that there's not a lot going on and great work, but just because of the scope of this, I think there will be many more conversations that we can look forward to on that. Other director questions? Otherwise, I do want to keep us moving. Director Jane?
So of course, traffic and signal prioritization, it's an NP complete problem. It lends itself to, AI tools that really work on optimization. And my question is, it's been very expensive for the cities to upgrade their signaling hardware on, say, the fast routes, the El Camino Real or Stevens Creek. But there's knock-on effects to other signals, like, say, on Lafayette or Monroe in Santa Clara. So do the cities have these AI tools, or are they dependent on VTA for these advanced AI tools to say, perhaps you should upgrade this other signal further down the line on Lafayette to optimize your traffic to communicate with the light on El Camino that has the TSP? Do you understand my question? And, it's been problematic trying to find enough money just to upgrade the hardware on El Camino, but to go further downstream could help a lot of traffic, and maybe that's some of the reluctance that the cities have.
You've asked a TSP infrastructure and equipment question that I'm not prepared to answer. I'd have to ask our colleagues in the engineering and program delivery team that are experts in TSP to get you more adequate answer on the AI tools and such. So we'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you. Let's keep going with the presentation and then get to public comment.
Okay, I'm just going to introduce this real quick. The next section is transform. This is going to be actually an area that we're going to focus on more in April, but Michael Tree is going to cover some of this today, just a abbreviated version of it. This is really important, particularly in being able to take a look at our agency as we move forward in preparing, I guess, in a way that would be, what are we going to be looking like in the next 20, 25, 30 years? But we have to start to really look at it now and in the next 2 years, within now or in the next 2 years. I would say that we didn't address a lot around light rail. Light rail is really going to be in the transform phase. It's because when we make those decisions, they're major decisions and they're lasting decisions for a while. And so there will be a presentation that was going to be later today, but we wanted to spend some time on these activities. So we're actually going to present it at the March board meeting. So there will be more about the light rail program, the future light rail program, at the board meeting at March. That we'll talk a little bit about that, but you will hear slightly about that today as well. But I just want to give a sense that really around the transform, it is really making a sense of where do we want to be with VTA as a program, as an operation, going forward, really sort of leading out versus following our peers, but in a way sort of being able to take some risks in where we're going in terms of transforming our system. What are we seeing our customers want? Being very customer focused, that is going to be a basis for where we go. That is what's going to drive our ridership. And so that is sort of something that we're going to look at versus being more focused around what can we afford in our budget. That's going to be important, but what we can afford in our budget based on what our customers want. And that's actually going to be really key. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael right now. Michael?
Sounds great. Thank you. Well, it's good to be here this morning, and the definition of transformation is pretty, well, as it says, it's pretty dramatic, right? I just wanted to give you a cute little story and gist, or almost a fictitious story, but Carolyn asked me to basically look around the corner in the future and see what transformation needs to occur in Silicon Valley and Santa Clara County to basically take advantage of all of the technology that's available today. And she said, you have no constraints, just get the best minds in the country or the world together and figure that out. And I say this in gist, but I think what she really told me was when a new customer uses VTA after implementing some of these transformational concepts, I want to hear one thing out of the phone conversation when they call. That was easy. You know, for transformation to work, it not only needs to use the technology that's available in your day, but it also just needs to be doggone easy to use. I think that's what most residents are hoping for. You heard that there's a couple of big wants when it comes to public transit. They want to get where they're going quicker, and that includes the entirety of their trip. And they want service to where they need to go. And so I have taken kind of a dive into transformation. Again, this is just a quick overview. April's going to be my time, or my team's time, to really kind of decompress some of the things we'll talk about. But we definitely started out with some key values that we wanted to make sure we adhered to as we thought about transformation. We know that innovation is going to be a big piece of it, and we also know that at VTA, our employees are the most important asset that we have in the agency, and so we want to bring our workforce along with the technology to make sure that, you know, as a family, we're moving forward together and taking every opportunity for each of our employees to succeed. We want to put the customer first. And so, you know, if you're in the private sector and you're thinking about what does the customer want, well, you heard today the two top priorities of what they want. And I think the Visionary Network is a timeless set of principles for how public transit works best. But I do want to recognize that public transit still, even with the Visionary Network, probably has some areas for improvement to go from good to great. Using technology, a key value is we want our customers to be happy. We want them to really feel like that was an easy, comfortable, exciting experience, because that's where your best ridership growth will occur, is from referrals, comments that are made by new passengers. And then the quality, right? You want to keep your customers coming back, and if your quality is not there, then they won't. And so those are kind of some key values that we teed up early on. We divided the work into 4 different areas. Actually 5, I'll show you in April. This slide, for whatever reason, just didn't quite get the update. I'm sure that was my problem. But if you considered some buckets, right, of ideas that we're looking at behind the scenes for April, there's the marketing and the customer experience, there's partnerships and alliances, there's productivity, there's workforce development, and there's diversification of revenues. And so these are buckets, and there's multiple things to look at. I'll show you them real quick, but I'll only focus on 1 or 2 things in the bucket at the moment to kind of whet your appetite for what you'll see in April. So marketing and customer experience, here's what's in the bucket. AI technology, how can that support us? Personalized marketing, how is that important? The customer experience action plan implementation that we're planning, new modern fleet vehicles. What's the data going to show as far as ridership increases based on a modern fleet that is more amenable to relaxed and comfortable travel? Today, I just want to hit on personalized marketing real quick. And basically, data-driven personalized marketing means you drill down and you get a relationship with the customer who has very easy access with your system. And so in number 2, if you take a look at that, let me catch up with my notes. So in number 2, we take an example of establishing a relationship through social media and customer engagement of residents who both live and work within a 10-minute walk or a half mile of your light rail stations. And with that relationship, then create opportunities with AI to enhance their user experience, to extend offers, to extend information that keeps them excited about using public transportation. And so I want to give you just a quick example before I depart from this slide. You have approximately 400,000 residents living within a half mile of your light rail stations in Santa Clara County. And if you did data-driven personalized marketing, and you envision people out of that 400,000 who both live and work within that 10-minute walk, for simplicity, let's just say that you find 10% out of that 400,000 who meet that criteria. You establish a relationship with them, you work to get them a free Clipper card to try out the system, you really take care of them. And so if 40,000 begin to use the light rail system, which is 10% of that 400,000, and use it 3 times a week, knowing that there's going to be some work from home in there, and they do that for the 52 weeks out of the year, that's 12.5 million new trips into the light rail system. So that gives you an idea of the power of data, the power of very focused marketing, and establishing a relationship so that you can continue to offer incentives for your customer. So I'm going to move on. The new light rail vehicles, they're going to be exciting. Industry will say that you'll probably get a 15 to 20% increase in your ridership just based off the fact that now I'm riding in a really sexy new vehicle. And I'm happy to talk about that and be prideful about that. And then on the inside, obviously, if you can create some amenities to make it a more opportune space for socializing, for checking out a new YouTube video, or for catching up on your email, if you can make that an easy process for them, that's only going to add to that ridership. So here's an interesting area that Carolyn asked me to take a look at, strategic partnerships and alliances. Because in public transit, we have our traditional go-to partners, right? We've got Gillig Bus, we've got New Flyer Bus, we've got Jarrett Walker, who's doing our planning for us, and Nelson Nygaard, and so on. And Carolyn asked me to figure out in the world, in the market, who could take a look at what we're doing and offer thoughts on how we could not only implement the visionary network to attract more riders and have more efficiency, but what are we missing? Is there a new dimension in this visionary network that perhaps we have walked away from in the past or is surfacing in the future? And so I want to give you an idea of our strategic partners that we're working with behind the scenes for the April workshop. Most of these, we have a fluid conversation going. Others we will in the near future. But it's pretty amazing to talk to Uber about their platform and the AI from NVIDIA that is going into their platform. They're capitalized at a scale of $196 billion. And their platform is nothing less than top of the line in the world. How do we take that technology in an alliance or a partnership and perhaps create a new, easier way for people to move within the network? Zook has some fantastic vehicles of the future. Basically, what we asked of these partners was, given the technology of autonomous vehicles, of AI and other things, how can we make our system much easier to use? Here's an example of kind of playing in the sandbox and a project that is probably coming in the near future. It's connecting complementary uses. You've got just to kind of orient you on the map. You've got Terminal A and Terminal B within that shaded area. Then you've got various hotels and casinos within that shaded area or adjacent to it. And your strategic partners are really interested in creating a pilot project to see how autonomous and AI technology can be used to create a more simplified and easy-to-use transit experience. And that's the Zook vehicle down below, which they're testing in the Mission District up in San Francisco, and will soon go into revenue service with that vehicle. And of course, Waymo has their autonomous vehicles and so on. So having them talking is a really big deal for VTA, and I think the results in April will be fun to talk about. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but obviously your productivity drivers are really important. One of the ones that's been mentioned today is the downtown light rail redesign, which can offer efficiencies and speed to the light rail, but also can be transformational in the downtown area. Workforce development, we've talked about that at the beginning of the presentation, really the importance of, from day one, interacting with and considering your workforce a key partner in the way that you move forward with your business. At the end of the day, they're the ones who will keep your customer coming back. And then diversifications of revenues. Just wanted to make mention that this bucket will be talked about in April, ways in which you can take revenues and strengthen your position as an agency, create an ambience of sustainability. You have fair revenue, which we're hoping to augment with the things that we've talked about today: transit-oriented development, express lanes, congestion mitigation funds, which might be implemented in the future, tax increment or value capture, and then also the potential for the regional measure coming up. So long story short, these are 4, and I'll augment it to 5 by the time you see this next, buckets that we'll talk about in April, which should be a fun conversation.
I think we're going to finish off the presentation, then take the questions. So just a few more slides.
Thank you, Michael. So I wanted to do a quick overview of some of the recent VTA commissioned EMC polling results, just some of the top lines, because I think this is a good transition from our 3 categories that we discussed here today: foundation, reimagine, and transform. And as we move into what will become most of the content for the April 17th workshop, which will be more on transformation, including some of the strategic partnerships that Michael mentioned, including some of the work that we are currently doing with MTI, but also beginning to talk a lot more about the draft local investment plan, so the Santa Clara County portion of the 5-county measure, so that we can take what we've talked about, what we've thought about, but also what staff has heard from the community, from community-based organizations, cities, counties. Again, getting back to the earlier comment on TSP, there is going to be, it should be early next week that there will be communications sent out to our cities, but also increasingly our CBO partners, community-based organization partners, and the public, to really begin that input, that in-reach outreach, and say, here is what SB 63 says this money can be spent on. Here is approximately what we think will be the amount that comes to Santa Clara County after we've handled our regional as well as Caltrain related obligations. Now what? Let's think about this programmatically. So I think it's important just to think also and to remind ourselves, what are people feeling right now? So in Santa Clara County, we've got the usual right direction, wrong track questions. You can see that you've got a somewhat positive or at least steady trend of 61% of folks who were respondents, and these were likely voters, in the November, early December timeframe, saying right track in Santa Clara County, wrong track 37%. And then this still held steady between the MTC polling a couple months prior to this and this Santa Clara County specific polling on if the election were held today, would you vote yes or no on the measure? And it was 50-50. And just a reminder that because this is a citizen-led initiative, it would only need 50% plus 1 to pass. So the fact that it held steady, I think is also probably a positive or at least neutral sign. And then some of the top lines. So when folks were asked about things a regional transportation measure could do in Santa Clara County, what were the things that rated highest? Providing strict oversight for how money is spent, that's natural. Repairing potholes and repaving roads. You'll recall that in SB 63, there are funds can be used for road improvements where there's fixed route transit. Reducing traffic congestion always ranks highly, and transit is a powerful tool for that. Protecting transit service for seniors, students, and people with disabilities. Making sure public transit is available for people who need it. That's a little bit broad, but I think it does get to both the span of service, the frequency of service, and to some degree coverage. Better connections with our BART, Caltrain, and VTA partners, and then ultimately expanding public transit to come closer to where many people live and work. And I think, again, a number of folks here today have made this point. It stuck with me, Director Mulcahy, when you were talking about sort of that total trip journey. Also, Director Candelas, when you were talking about sort of the premium that certain folks pay when they're further from mobility options. And so what can we do to reduce that? So these were the things that rated highest here. And then one thing, even though he is not with us right now, the Vice Chair also made a comment and a question, which was another part of the survey, which were what are the main reasons that people don't use public transit in Santa Clara County more frequently or at all? Inconvenient and slow is number one, which is good in the sense that it is something that we focused on today, and it's something that we know from data and from study and from industry best practices will move the needle if we make some discrete capital investments. And then also doesn't go where I need it to. And so, I'm glad that these two things, in a sense, wound up rising to the top, because I think it's going to help us when we start having this conversation about, all right, we've got 14 years worth of new money. What do we invest it in? What do we put it into that's sustainable? What grows ridership efficiency, et cetera? So just wanted to put that out there because I think it's really important context. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to our general manager to close this out.
Okay, so the next steps going forward primarily is building on this workshop. As I mentioned, a lot of our outcomes are really focused on growing our ridership, increasing productivity, and enhancing the customer experience. Really, our goal is to really get to financial sustainability. We are going to be going out to the public even before the April workshop and starting to outreach to community organizations, particularly the cities as well, the public, to start solicit input on what they would want to see in the measure based on the various areas that are on the next slide. And those would be like in the foundation area, things that we're doing right now, what we're planning on doing in the future, and then some of those transformational projects like what about modernizing our light rail fleets, those types of things. Caltrain electrification, that vehicle was actually drawn riders to the system as well. So we're going to be taking a look at those types of things. We know a faster bus system is appropriate. They want to see light rail go faster. They expect it to go faster. So those are things that we're looking at. But our goal right now is to invest in services, as I put here, to really invest in services and programs that are customer focused and efficiently provided using the best tools available to maximize our resources as we go forward. That's the goal. VTA's path forward. Here's some sample projects that we'll probably be discussing with them. The bus corridor improvements. That includes in those corridors roadway works such as paving, roadway repair, local streets and roads, station upgrades, minor station upgrades throughout, transit service improvements, additional transit service, and then the transit capital improvements that we talk about. The next one would be reimagine. We're talking about implementing the visionary network, more frequency. Some of the speed improvements, extra fare programs for seniors and students, some of the fare collection activities, some of the equity programs we'll be looking at, safety and security enhancements. We'll be looking at personalized marketing. But we're also going to just reach out as well as to see what else they would be looking at they'd like to really see a change in. But then again, we'd also be, when we'd be working with, say, our workforces, our unions, we'd be talking to them about the various activities we'd be doing in-house. And also, I do find that they're very useful in discussing what they see that the customer wants as well. And that's really helpful. Next slide would be on the transformation, looking at some of the innovative projects we talked about today. Some areas that we'd be looking for use of artificial intelligence over and above what we talked about, light rail fleet, station redevelopments like Dearborn, Palo Alto, some of the major hubs. I really want to talk about a little bit more about wayfinding, which we would be wanting to look at both to support us and what is in the regional network component of the regional measure. So those are really key. I'd like to see more wayfinding and be more part of the communities. That's a big part of it as well. So those will continue to go forward. And then the next slide, just to let you know, we are going to be looking at developing KPIs. We're not going to look at a huge amount of them, but they're going to reflect those three areas that I've been talking about: growing ridership, productivity, and customer experience, that reflect those three outcomes, as well as financial stability. In those areas, what we'll do is look at those KPIs. We're going to include funding percentages for each area of those areas, and then come to you with that in April or May, depending on where we are in terms of the workshop, and then hopefully adopt the plan in June. This is a good roadmap for us going forward. No matter what, it's something that we need to do. We need to be able to move forward, particularly in where do we want to go in just the activities that we're doing now. It's something we need to do as an agency, and it's something that we need to do in terms of just what we're looking at with our measures that we currently have and what we will do with Measure A, because Measure A is just actually around the corner after this measure that we're looking at now. So I really appreciate the time today, and we're open to any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, staff, so much for the presentation. Just one question before we'll go into director comments and questions, and then public comment. Michael, for I believe the last of your slide, I'm sorry, not the last of your slides. Let me find the number. When you're talking about the partnership, so probably 48 is the best for this. Could you just be really clear, and this is my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, but none of these partnerships, if I'm understanding, would replace transit service or jobs. Are you really looking more the last mile partnership for partnerships that are additive? Is that the case?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of summarizing it.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure it's absolutely clear to directors and the audience. Any comments or questions from the board? Director Sell and then Director Jane.
I have a comment on page 48 about partnerships. Several of the cities have microtransit. Like in Sunnyvale, we're going to roll out this year a microtransit. So they'll have an app, and the point of that is last mile, first mile. So it would be good to, some of the companies are VIA, some of the cities are Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Milpitas, Palo Alto, San Jose microtransit. So, and I was wondering, in billboards, some of the cities are using billboards to monetize things, and so that might be good. And it seemed like Super Bowl was really successful in communicating to all those people to ride VTA. And I just wondering, like, leading up into this year, like, those kind of ways where you communicate with all those kind of people to get onto Super Bowl, is that communication to get out positive messaging about VTA, like, beneficial, so that it's just not those little community groups that hear positive things, or just the people that attend the city hall meeting, but like mass, that people have a sustained good opinion of VTA and worthwhile to continue to invest. So those are just thoughts.
Thank you. Any response or just?
No, I was just going to acknowledge, I will say, just from, I think this is true probably universally in transit, certainly for VTA. I'm sure, Carolyn, you had this experience in Utah as well. I mean, things like the Super Bowl, let alone FIFA, let alone just your average 49ers game, it's one of those opportunities to showcase what it is we do and what we do well for people who may not have ever ridden on VTA before and show them a positive experience. So I think that we were able to do that very successfully for 30-some thousand people. So.
Thank you. Director Jane?
I know Supervisor Ennis had talked about the slide with the duck and the chicken, and it shows 6.8 miles for the buses. That's not for BRT, right? For BRT, we should be getting substantially faster buses. I'm just wondering, do we have data on, average speed of buses? How much it's improved by BRT?
We do. Yeah, that's a great point. The sample that's in the slide is for Route 23. And so the routes like you're talking about that use the BRT lanes, we have average speeds on every one of our routes. So we have that data, and it is faster. So on the 522, for example, the average speed in the 522, it also makes limited stops. So that's important to remember. Average speed in the 522 is 15 miles an hour. Doesn't mean that we can't speed that one up as well. So, we could bring all services up and faster and grow ridership on everything, whether it's slow or fast.
And so the average speed I hear on light rail is about 18 miles an hour. And that's a dedicated lane, separated lane for light rail. So are you considering things like grade separation? I hear that some of the issues are signaling issues on the light rail that's keeping it slow. Can you talk to that?
I think the quick answer to say is that we're considering everything for light rail. So everything is on the table. You're right that light rail, because it operates in its own right-of-way, it has some easier strategies to keep it fast. So the strategies that we're left with, or the challenges with light rail that we're left with, primarily have to do with when light rail is crossing streets and there's signals involved. And so TSP is a great strategy in the light rail space that we can actually see a lot of upside for improving the light rail speeds in areas that it's not grade separated, like in Milpitas or in the East Ridge Extension, for example.
And is that your priority now for TSP over, say, El Camino, or because it seems like light rail speeds should be much faster?
I wouldn't call it a priority over bus just because it's light rail. I think we're working on it all together, and as we work with the cities to upgrade their infrastructure for signaling systems, for example, the city of San Jose has done a very advanced new signaling system that, cloud-based system that you can work on signal timing and adjust parameters and such in a much easier fashion, whereas it used to be much more manual. And so a blanket approach like that can apply to both light rail and to the bus system. So I would say that our priority is everything on the frequent network. That's what we're really focusing on right now, to make sure that all the signals in the frequent network at least have the ability to have that TSP discussion with city staffs, and then we can work on the trade-offs together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have other director questions? No. If not, then we can go to public comment for this item. Thank you again, staff, for the presentation. I have 3 in-person speaker cards, so we'll start with those. And in order, those are Emerson Cody, Mariah Ray, and Sebastian Petty.
Hello, my name is Emerson Cody, and I am a student at San Jose City College. During the Board of Directors meeting on December 4th, 2025, I made a public comment suggesting ways that VTA could improve outreach to students to hear what they need in transit. And I think it's a good time to bring that back up. People are currently gathering signatures for the Connect Bay Area initiative, which would grant to VTA an additional $264 million in funding if it passes. In the event that this initiative does pass, it could provide funding which could help greatly increase bus frequencies, particularly at colleges which are served by low-frequency routes. And this could help create more riders of choice and increase productivity and bring more of the visionary network to fruition. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mariah Ray, followed by Sebastian Petty.
You can see that I'm not Mariah. She had to step out for a call, so I'll be filling in. My name is Vincent Ma. I'm here on behalf of Glideways. We are one of the partners on the San Jose Connector Project, which is a public-private partnership consortium selected by the City of San Jose to develop, design, build, and operate the airport connector, which will provide service between Diron Station and the San Jose Mineta Airport. Glideways is an automated transit network which utilizes automated vehicles, or AVs. They're also EVs, electric vehicles, and they operate in a dedicated right-of-way, which is a dedicated guide rail. It's on-demand, direct-to-destination system, and it can be built at lower capital expense and lower operating expense. It's designed to attract more riders, also inducing demand for the service, especially among choice riders. The project adds new net capacity and complements existing transit systems by integrating with Clipper for payments and integrating into VTA scheduling. The airport connector aligns well with the goals that you guys mentioned earlier, such as growing ridership, increasing productivity, and enhancing the customer experience. Yep, thanks. We appreciate the opportunity to continue working.
Thank you so much. Sebastian.
Good morning, Chair Lopez and board member. Sebastian Petty with Spur. Really here this morning to commend this board first for your decision last year to opt into SB 63 and the leadership you showed in doing that, and now for your decision to really undertake this effort to look at how VTA can adapt to the future, provide better value to customers and the public as a whole, and really achieve that level of growth and financial sustainability. Want to emphasize this is a conversation that's playing out in different ways throughout the region and really across the country as a whole among transit agencies. It is a complex topic. When you talk about things like efficiency, you invoke really a vast domain of just every area of the business, and I think you heard that from staff today. So encourage you to view this as a marathon, not a sprint, but also really glad that you're taking advantage of the opportunity to pair this conversation up with the conversation around local investment priorities. So again, thank you for your time and attention to this matter.
Thanks so much. Harry Neal.
Good morning. First of all, staff, thank you all for your presentation. I was watching at home, so didn't just get here. But this is very, very exciting. The possibility of transforming VTA into what could really be a world-class transit network. This is something that I've been wanting to move forward on for a long time, and I'm really glad to see it happening. I do want to say on some of the notes of autonomous vehicles and AI for back-end data stuff, what my friends and I call machine learning stuff. Love that. Fantastic. For customer-facing things that might be generative in nature, that's really gross. And the environmental impacts are really horrible. And as someone who has a lot of artist friends whose work has been scraped to train AI, yucky. So let's try and focus more on that back-end stuff. Thank you.
I think that's it for in-person. Can we go to online public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will call on Roland, followed by Tammy, Eugene, Jordan, Adina. Roland, you may begin speaking when ready.
Yes, good morning. As I understand it, last year's board referral asked for proposals that will ensure that we do not have to go back to the voters for yet another tax measure 14 years from now. Today's presentation talked about funding for AI, ADVL, big data, etc., but there were no before and after dollar amounts. So in closing, my question to the chair is how a 32% reduction in rail operating costs could possibly address an operating subsidy of $125 per Super Bowl rider, over $200 per FIFA rider, and last but not least, $300 per daily rider on the 10-mile bus extension. Thank you.
Tammy, you may begin speaking when ready. Tammy.
Hi, my name is Tammy Danetta from SEIU Local 521. I'm also a 30-year employee from VTA. I'm here to talk on behalf of our members, but also just to remind you that there are 4 unions at VTA, and we really need to not be an afterthought or lip service. more of having a seat at the table means always having a seat at the table, not just after they have a proposal like this coming to us and letting us know, hey, next week we're going to have this proposal. I don't also want to miss the part that this is a huge proposal when it comes to automation and AI. The unions are concerned about customer safety, but also employees' jobs. Long term, this isn't a good move for VTA. And we'll always have concerns when we don't get the right to negotiate these things. When we represent the workers, we always have the right to negotiate what's best for our workers, but also what's best for the community and the services that we provide for them. So we need the board to listen to what we need as well. Thank you.
We'll call on Eugene. You may begin speaking when ready.
Morning, board members and staff. Eugene Bradley, Silicon Valley Transit Users. I echo some of the previous comments, particularly the ones regarding AI. Part of my day job nowadays is to work with AI, get it to properly train folks in making sure the right thing is done. Just make sure that AI does not violate folks' privacy. Last thing VTA would need is a expensive lawsuit because they stole from somebody's work without that person's permission. So use caution on the AI part. Overall, this is a very good presentation, something that I've worked for more than 20 years to try to get VTA to really be the best it could be and not a transit agency that was still stuck largely in the 1940s and 50s. Now it needs to go into the 21st century more than ever before. So overall, this presentation was good to see. I would love to speak to staff about some suggestions that could help make VTA better. I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Jordan, you may begin speaking when ready.
Hi, Jordan Moldow, San Jose. The contents of the presentation are great, I think. Most of these things are great things to do in isolation. But I think the big question before us is what plan can we put forward to the voters that will make skeptics want to vote for this and make your transit enthusiasts want to get out the vote for this measure. And to that end, I think it's really important that we put a majority of new funds into providing more frequent transit. I love TSP. TSP is great, but we're already funding TSP through grants, and we could put more of that money towards increasing frequency, which the slides seem to indicate that we get higher bumps in ridership through frequency increases compared to TSP increases. So please consider that. And I'd also echo some of the previous speakers. People are going to vote for the measure if they see real changes, not like wishy-washy things like AI. Thank you.
And Adina, you may begin speaking when ready.
Yes, Adina Levin with Seamless Bay Area. Really great to see the strategies being discussed at the board today, including taking a really data-driven approach for making a more rider-friendly, fast and frequent and reliable system. One thing that really stood out as part of the polling results was people want end-to-end connections from where they're coming from where they're going, including first and last mile and connecting to the transit network overall. So that speaks to the value overall of the Connect Bay Area measure that has the potential to maintain Caltrain and BART service without cuts and improve the overall network with significant major improvements to bring VTA service up to world-class levels. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thanks so much. Any last remarks from board members? Thank you. I'll make a few. Just thank you everyone for the deep level of discussion, engagement on this, and staff for all the work. This is the beginning of this conversation, not the end. And as several commenters brought up, the regional funding measure, that is certainly an important piece of the context, but not the only one for this discussion. So we'll have a number of upcoming discussions shortly about this to continue this, and I'll turn it over to staff to say more about that. But again, I really view this as an opportunity for generational transformation of transit to get to the kind of system that we want and that our riders deserve. And it's incredibly exciting time to be on the board, to be able to have your decisions impact that in real and tangible ways that we can see. So with that, I'll turn it back to Sam.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the board for making time to be with us today. I know there's a lot of competing priorities and really appreciate you being with us throughout this conversation. We've got a lot of good comments and questions to act on, both from the board members, from the public, from our union partners, and just thanks to everyone here, Carolyn, the rest of the team, for helping us to pull all of this information together, hopefully in a digestible form. And I'll say that I think we're looking forward to next week at the board meeting with the light rail presentation, which we were not able to do today. And then we'll continue to engage with you and with your cities, county, the public at large on the local investment plan, and then get everything ready, get you all briefed before the April 17th workshop. And then eventually we'll move towards June 4th, I believe, is the board meeting. That would be when the board would approve the local investment plan. But just want to say thank you very much. Anything further, Carolyn?
I'm gonna have you guys I want to thank the team and actually your support as well. And the questions that you asked were great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. That concludes our special board meeting.
I will end meeting for all.
The rolling chairs didn't make it in there.
Damn. I told Carolyn, I said, that was just like the chicken in the thing, right? We could have picked on that all day long.
Yeah, they could have. Yeah. You got criticism every time.